Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Hoop and the Harm. I'm joined as always by our Batter Sports NBA insider, Nolan. How are you this fine evening, sir?
I'm doing all right, hanging in there. Brendan, how are you?
I'm doing fine. I feel like we were angling this week to cover something different, but they don't let us. So I have to go right into what we now can call is the Dallas dumpster. This story went bad. We both were optimistic with the injury coming back and Irving playing great. This injury now is just I just think it's over.
Yeah, this is like doomsday scenario. Those poor slobs, those Maverick fans, you got to feel for them. I mean, this is Batter Sports, right? This is it doesn't get much better than this. This is rough.
I was thinking, like, if only they had a player to step in who could handle the basket. Oh, they don't have him anymore.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a real scenario here where we never even see Irving and Davis on the same team again after one game together. That's what's crazy.
I didn't even think about that, but you're not wrong with the knee injury. He's out 8 to 12 months.
Yep. And at this point, and I'm pretty sure Irving can opt out of his contract or maybe next year. Like he might decide maybe not, maybe he opts in because of the injury, but they might just decide like, hey, let's just give Davis away and get some draft capital back and a young player and start over again.
So if you were to do the flow chart as all those people do at work, you were like, we got Luka for Davis for whomever. I mean, you could trade Davis to OKC, I get, or trade him to somebody who's next year who's like thinking about it. I didn't even think about it. I didn't even think they wouldn't play together. I just thought, okay, so next year around April, Christmas, around January, February, he comes back.
As long as this Davis injury doesn't prove to be like worse than anticipated, like teams will be clamoring for him. They will be able to get a good deal for Davis.
So since the trade, this is what the Dallas Mavs have done. Now, again, actually, let's go back a little bit. Since Mark Cuban has decided to sell his share or his majority ownership of the team. Now, you can even go back further in Mark Cuban. Do you remember how Mark Cuban made all of his wealth?
Yes.
He created a company for those kiddos that have not been around. There was this .com bubble. Similar to crypto, different but similar because there's some winners and some losers. He created some kind of a cool, awesome website that was projected to be extremely profitable. And he sold it to Yahoo, I believe, for an astronomical amount of money that within the first year was proven to be not worth what he sold it for.
Right. So
with that money he has lived on.
Was that brilliance or was it just sheer luck or somewhere in between?
I'm going to propose my theory here. Now, with that known, he bought the Mavs and he's done some other things. He sold his interest in the Mavs. They have traded what one would argue is a once-in-a-lifetime talent.
Generational.
We both compared him to Ant-Man. Again, I would never trade Ant-Man, so I guess I would never trade Luka. So traded him. Kyrie gets hurt. They raised ticket prices at the same time. This is all happening after he sold that interest. So I would present to you that he's neither lucky nor unlucky. You should just never buy anything from him that he's created.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think he's the special sauce. I think with him involved as a majority, it's awesome. Once he leaves, like he's like the guy plugging in all the wires back in the day for the phone connections, and then he's like sold the company and he leaves and they're like, who plugs in all those wires? And it's like, yeah, he left. He sold you the company. Do you have somebody else who does this? Like,
now you got me curious about his like Shark Tank statistics. I wonder. I'm sure someone has been keeping tabs on how many successful properties he's purchased.
It's funny because he talks a lot of smack about Trump, and I believe the biggest sale he ever got was from was from that original sale. I don't think his net value has
It never went
gained
up?
much in the billions.
Okay.
But he always talks smack about Trump, I guess, and that's his big thing. They're trying to recruit him to be president. And I just thought to myself, God, when he gets out of office, how bad will it be?
Well, there is no doubt that they don't trade Luka on his watch. I don't see that happening.
I could
never imagine.
Nobody could see that happening. So it's like, again, I go back to like, hey, what's the special ingredient? You have to keep Mark Cuban. That's the ingredient. He has that special aura.
Although he did let Jalen Brunson walk.
Fair point. I mean, you don't always win in the NBA, but I'm just saying
most of the time you don't.
you can add like 3 things in your life and say, see, I have a conclusion.
Yeah.
But we are much more complicated than that. This Dallas thing is just, I don't think it can't get any worse.
No.
Knock on wood, because I don't know what's going to happen, but this is bad.
For a team that was just in the finals too. That's heart-wrenching.
Do you think they make the play-in game this year then? Since the injury, I believe they've lost by a combined 50 points or something. It's crazy how bad they've
No, I don't think they do. I don't think they do. I think they there's too much competition. There's teams now that'll slip in over them, like the Kings and I'm forgetting some. I mean,
Portland, the Suns are all out. They're all the next teams are.
But the Kings were probably a team that was looking at probably not making it, and now will. The Warriors, as we want to talk about, are getting better. But you know, I know this is a basketball show, but this I'm thinking about it from a fan's point of view, and my heart goes out to Mavericks fan. I don't have a lot of love for Mavericks fans, but man, this reminds me of the Mets in 2015. Like in the World Series with this great rock solid pitching staff, and we're thinking it's okay. They're gonna be back. They're gonna be back next year, and then the year after that, and then it just all fell apart. And that's what's happened to the Mavericks. Like they probably thought, we got Luka, man. We got Kyrie in his prime. We're gonna be golden. The pain.
You have neither.
No. Now you have neither. Maybe not ever again.
It's crazy because also the NFL does the same thing. When your team's right there or you just lose, you're like, oh, we can make it back. You have to be both lucky.
You do have to be lucky.
And excellent to make it to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It's the same with the World Series, and it's the same with the NBA. You have to be lucky, meaning you can't have a bad injury at a bad time.
Yeah.
Period. End of story. If you get a bad injury at a bad time, your chances go down the tubes.
I will say the NBA is as far as injury goes, you have to be lucky. But if you stay healthy in the NBA, if you have a really good championship contending team, like you'll be back. I mean, we saw the Warriors and the Cavs in the finals 4 years in a row, which was
0 injuries, both loaded.
Painful.
I agree with you that's probably what makes this even worse. It's not baseball or football.
Yeah,
and it's just. So that's I don't think we have anything else to say. It's just it's like that dumpster on fire just rolling down, and we're all watching it. And the fans are leaving. The fans are chanting that they should fire the GM.
For us that don't have a skin in the game, we're just kind of like interested, morbidly curious to what they're going to do. Like, do they trade Kyrie and Davis in the offseason, or do they try to like slog through with some low key signings? I mean, it's a conversation for another day. But
what do you? No one trusts the GM. As a fan, no one trusts his GM ever.
No.
So I don't know if that means like, do the owners care? That's the other thing. Do the owners even care? It's like, do whatever you got to do. I
don't know.
But the owner looks terrible. The new spokesman for Dallas doesn't look that great.
No, it would be bad to. They're in a tough spot because they probably should just fire him, but it looks really bad to like make that kind of trade and then immediately get rid of the guy who did it. I mean, a lot of companies do that. A lot of companies are like, man, that guy who was here was really bad. Yeah. It's you got to have somebody. You got to feed the wolf, and right now the fans are the wolves, and they are hungry. They're hungry.
They're very hungry. Now let's talk about the other side, the flip side of this trade, because Luka's now playing. He's back from his injury.
Yep.
They're second. They're a 2 seed now. The Lakers are a 2 seed.
Yeah.
So they were not a 2 seed, and they've decided to win a bunch, and now they're a 2 seed. And LeBron James, who I now believe is an alien.
We could be very much looking at another Celtics versus Lakers finals.
And you know who loves that? The guy who doesn't eat, the commissioner.
Speaking of aliens.
I mean, they're helping each other out.
It's all coming together now. It's all coming together now.
His numbers make no sense.
Look, James is unbelievable. I know, I've said before on this show and probably will say again, I don't think he's the GOAT. I don't think he is, I think he's not perfect, but he's a freak of nature. He's playing, unbelievable. But it sure does help to have someone like Luka Doncic on the other side of the court to play along with at this point.
I don't know. Again, I still don't know how they're going to do in the playoff because they don't have the bigs down below. But again,
they don't really have a real traditional center.
The NBA doesn't need that anymore.
That's just it. Although,
and he's like 6'9".
I still think OKC will get the best of them. I think because it's LeBron and Luka, and the NBA loves the Lakers. I think you'll see them put up a real good fight, but I think OKC would top them.
Do you have any other explanation to why James's numbers are this good, this old? This is ridiculous.
He's got a time machine. I don't know. We're seeing some crazy things in an.
I feel like we should go in the locker room and go back to the baseball era when they had all of the stuff behind Mark McGwire and like, hey, how are you hitting all these home runs? And he's got all of the supplements.
That would be a fun trip
came on to realize that, like, oh, that's why he is obviously on some good stuff, legal or illegal, right or wrong. I know nothing. I accuse of nothing. That's why I just have to call him an alien because, again, you're never going to see this again.
Well, the reality is that the technology is only going to get better as far as it goes with masking this kind of stuff. So it can't be considered out of the question. But we'll never know.
In our lifetime, I don't think I'm going to see a kid come out of college because now you got to go to college for a year. A kid come out of college and then play as long as he's played.
No.
And I certainly don't think, this is the other thing that's wild, you're going to see a guy have a child and then play with said child, regardless of his child deserves it or not.
Hey, his kid was good enough to, at least, get, it's to play for a good college team. Granted, his college career wasn't great. But I don't think anyone would say that he didn't deserve to play at that level. He was good enough to play at that level.
Nobody at the beginning of the scene thought this was real. They criticized podcaster turned coach. Again, this all started at a podcast. JJ and LeBron were doing a podcast.
Yeah.
Just like us. We're just as similar. Just I'm not an alien. You're not an alien. At least I don't know. And then JJ turns into the coach. Everyone's like, this is a disaster. He has no coaching experience. We don't know what you're doing. They draft his son in the second round, and they're just doing this for show. The Lakers have no future here.
And it almost seemed like James checked out too. Like he was just like fine with like if we win, we win. And now it's like they got Luka, and it's like, wow, we could do something with this.
It's so depressing. The Lakers are always good.
They always find a way.
And the commissioner loves it each time. I was laughing because I asked AI, my trusty assistant, Grok. I said, Grok, can you tell me a trade that did bad for the Lakers? And do you want to know what it told me?
What?
It said the Kobe Bryant trade. They traded Vlade and these picks for an unknown named Kobe Bryant. And then Grok proceeded to say, I believe this is a stretch, though. I said, you think?
Yeah.
You think that didn't turn out bad. There's no Laker fan in the world that's like, whoa, that trade was terrible for us.
No.
That's how few poor trades the Lakers have had. And I'm sure people will bring up some. But my God, the amount of winning trades they've had through the years is... And I'm over here eating my words in our third episode of just like, I thought Dallas did okay. I thought they were building something.
They have that ability every year to identify one of the best superstars in the league and somehow acquire him. You know, we want Shaquille O'Neal. Look at this beast who's taken over the NBA. We're going to sign him. And they did. You know, I'd have to look back, but I don't think there was really much competition. I think it was going to be the Lakers no matter what.
Do you remember the big story back then? For you kiddos, you know what the big deal about Shaquille's deal was? It was over $100 million, and there wasn't a team in the league who was going to spend that much money on a player. That's unheard of. $100 million on a player. And the Lakers were like, we're going to get it done. I do think you need to investigate the Lakers building or something. There's some extra thing going on. That's why it's aliens, the Lord, voodoo. I don't know what it is, but you can the magic of the Lakers continuing to be what they are.
No pun intended.
It's just I don't know what to say about it. But this is the trade. So now you have the Lakers who are definitely in the playoffs and Dallas who literally
and definitely a threat.
Want to burn it down. They want to burn it down.
They should, but
they're so upset. That takes us to, geez. Yeah, LeBron's an alien. I can't get over that. His numbers. I've watched a couple games and he's all over the place. He's rebounding. He's doing this, doing that, little things all over. My favorite play on defense that I've watched against the Lakers. Now they haven't played great teams. They just whooped on New Orleans. But the double team at half court against Luka, that's genius. I just think, if you wanted to know, there's other podcasters out there like JJ who can coach. You need to go get a real coach because anybody who's double teaming Luka to get the ball out of his hands so you can play a 4-on-3 with LeBron, that makes no sense to me.
No.
But they keep doing it. And then Luka's like, oh, look at me. I'm taller than the two guys you brought over. I'm going to do this silly pass to a wide open player. And now we're playing a 4-on-3 half court.
And just like that, Gabe Vincent has 5 3-pointers in a row because he's wide open every time.
I mean, it's the thing that I used to tear my hair out over the players who are the wide open, who get all the shots in the playoffs and hit the big ones, the Bruce Bowens, the B.J. Armstrongs, the Sam Cassells, these guys.
And now it's like the Austin Reeves of the world. That's another thing. Forget about the big free agent signings and trade acquisitions. They stumble across good players like it's nothing too. I mean, who the heck knew about Austin Reeves before the draft?
Nobody.
Maybe some really, draft experts, but the casual fan, who the heck is Austin Reeves? And he's U.S. Olympian level player.
Just put that jersey on, that gold jersey on.
It's magic.
It's something. Let's get into your Knicks. I think we have to change topics.
Who are playing the Lakers tonight, by the way?
the lovely New York Knickerbockers not doing so hot. What's going on?
It's crazy.
What is wrong with this team?
They've got a better record than they've had in 30 years or something like that. And yet it's the most unsatisfying winning season I've ever experienced because they cannot. They just don't play well against good teams. If they're on national television against anybody, it feels like almost every time they just completely go off the rails, and they've lost so many bad games or just eked out a win against so many bad teams this year. Again, I mean their record is I think they're 40-21 at this point.
Great record.
They're still third in the East, but it just feels like It feels like they're more talented than last year. I'm still making the Towns trade over and over again, but they lost something. They lost toughness, and they lost depth. When last year, I don't know. Tell me if this makes sense, Brendan. Last year, I felt like they didn't have a chance to beat the Celtics, but I thought if they were healthy, they could get to the conference finals and they could put up a real fight. Maybe lose even in 5 or 6 games, but keep the games pretty close. I felt like that was possible with last year with a quote-unquote less talented team. This year, and I feel like they would that was their ceiling, and their floor was where they got to, which was losing in the second round after a whole rash of injuries. This year, I feel like the Knicks, there's no shot they make it to the conference finals, and there's a real scenario where they lose in the first round and get upset.
Whoa.
Yeah. Where they get upset by, somebody.
I can't see that happening just because of the talent that they have, and because your little point guard from Dallas reminds me a lot of Steve Nash. He's got that, he has that I'm all in.
Statistically, he is the most clutch player in the league right now.
The problem that I have with him is his size.
Yeah.
If he was 3 to 5 inches taller, his whole world is different.
Oh, yeah.
And I guarantee you Dallas never lets him leave.
No, definitely not.
Because of his size. And the other thing is, last year I thought, didn't he get beat up pretty bad in the playoffs?
He did.
He was nursing a bunch of injuries. They do that. They really, really beat you up. And you got to, I don't know if he did something different in the offseason, but I don't.
And they're very inconsistent with calls on him, because haters will say that Brunson is a flopper. And I would agree that he does flop, but it's because there's a lot of games where he gets mauled and doesn't get called for it, and gets a lot of contact that maybe his stature makes it hard to see or whatever. But he's the least of my worries. Honestly, it's the rest of the guys coming up strong, because he's going to give you everything he has, and as long as he's healthy, he'll keep the Knicks as much in it as he can. But they need a lot of guys who are a little on the softer side to step up come playoff time.
I think that was the thing about your trade with Minnesota that was a big deal. Big Cat shrunk in the moment.
Yeah.
So will he rise to the moment? And again, he's a bigger guy, likes to take some threes. Again, like a game like tonight against the Lakers, he should be posting up in the lane and owning them. He should be getting 40 and 20.
100%.
But I guarantee you he'll sit on the outside. He wants a little finesse.
Yeah.
I just think I think it's hard when you have a little point guard. I think it makes things harder, especially to your point about the calls. It's easier to beat them up. I still remember they usually put a really bruiser on you. Mm-hmm. Like if you're the team scorer, you get the Raja Bells. You know what I mean? You get the guy who's going to just beat you up.
Good call.
And that's the point about like a LeBron, is they can take it. This is the problem that I have, and Dallas had with Luka, is they beat him up in that way. By the end of the playoffs, he didn't have anything.
Yeah.
Because he just didn't have the body to take it. That's the part that, again, I'll go back to the alien comment about LeBron. He gets beat up. And I'm telling you, like, there's no reason why he shouldn't be out a week by pulling, tweaking, doing something.
At some point, LeBron's got to just be like, ow, I'm an old man. This hurts. Like,
stop touching me. Well, he does that a lot, but again, he doesn't get all the calls like he used to. But when you're 6'9", you can take those hits a lot better than a guy who's 6'1".
Yeah.
There's nothing to it.
100%.
And again, that wears on you. By the fourth quarter, your shot comes up a little light. They don't call the fouls in the first quarter like they do in the fourth. So they let you get away with some things. And that's the part that I always got frustrated with, because teams were able to muscle Steve Nash around, and then on defense, you find him and you attack him. That was the one thing I saw early with Luka, is they would find Luka and attack him.
Yeah.
Now I just feel like coaches, well, again, they haven't played everybody. We'll see what happens. It's a long It's a long playoff. Playoffs are tough.
Yeah.
But I feel I agree with you on the Knicks. I think last year I felt that they had the toughness. This year I haven't seen it. I think the other problem with them is you're on that peak. You want to go up and you're not seeing it.
Right.
So like you would love to get to a conference final, but who's standing in your way? The Cavs are great.
Yeah.
Boston is great. Just great.
Yeah.
So those two teams.
There are some other ascending teams.
But those two teams, I would find it hard pressed to say this team. If those two teams lose before the Eastern Conference Finals, I will be surprised.
Oh yeah, that's got to be the matchup that we're most likely looking at. I think
the nice thing about I think that matchup, although I think it favors Boston because of the history and because the team has that, they've been there, done that. I feel like that series has a chance to beat each other up.
The only factor that I could see, or I shouldn't say I could see, the only factor that might favor the Knicks is the most controversial factor, one of the most controversial factors, and that's, Tom Thibodeau gets criticized for playing his starters like more minutes than anybody. And the three of their five starters are like in the top like 7 or 8 in the league in minutes or something like that. And they people kill them because he plays a short rotation. But maybe it works, and come playoff time when the other teams are gassed, the other team starters are gassed, maybe the Knicks are a little more used to it.
So my biggest problem with that is I loved D'Antoni, and he always had a 7-man. He had a 7-man swing. Oof. 2 men off the bench, 5 guys play. That was it. And the problem with that is on an 82-game season, and then you get into these playoffs, it does help to just have your guys sit for the end of 3 minutes and a quarter, another with the timeouts. You're giving them a lot more space. And there's something to be said about your bench stepping up and hitting it. I mean, Did you see the other day when Boston, those 2 guys, you had White and then the bench guy, both I think scored over 40.
And a lot of times, now they become household names because Boston's so big. But like Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard, like guys that probably are like not even like we don't even know who they are if they're on another team, right? And
because they just don't play them enough. And that's the thing. All these guys are talented. They're all skillful. I think you should have a bigger rotation, and as you get closer to the playoffs, you should figure out who your top is. I always compare it to like the NHL. They'll play the 4 lines all year long, and then you get to the playoffs, you play 3.
Yeah.
So you shorten it up for the playoffs, and you always still have the 4th line that comes in to give you a spark or do some things if you need it. But you usually shorten it up for your talented players.
That's what I would rather see. Start the year off and have, play 10, even 11. And let's get the bench involved. Let's see who's consistently good, and let's see who can be a role player, because that's what you're looking for in your bench. You're looking for role players. I mean, you might want that one guy that is like the heater off the bench who could score, in quick time. But start with 10 or 11 guys, and as the season goes on, scale it back. So come playoff time, the guys are getting a little more burn, the key guys, and you know what your rotation is. I feel like you start the year off with the small rotation and you keep driving with that. You don't know who you have in case of injury, or you don't know who you have when some guy is just gassed and you need somebody else to step up there. And Tom Thibodeau is a great coach. He's brought me more Knicks wins than almost anybody that I've seen coach the Knicks in my lifetime. But I feel like it's like somebody goes down and it's like, all right, let's just see what this guy got, and with no real plan to it.
I always compare it when I'm watching a team. You have your guys that you need to perform in a big moment.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have somebody off the bench give you 10, give you 8, it's like bonus points.
Absolutely.
You're like, oh, we expected nothing from this person, and he gave us 8 or 10 points.
Yeah.
So then your starters are like, oh man, you guys are screwed. You just gave a guy who shouldn't get anything some stuff.
Yeah.
And it just pumps him up. And I've always seen that like in other sports, but basketball especially. You get 8, 10, 15 points. And especially with the 3-point shooting, you get a guy who's hot. He hits 5 threes off the bench. You're
That's it.
That's 15 points we didn't expect to have.
You know what? Your starters are always going to be the ones, for the most part, who are going to win the games for you. So, I mean, yes, like the starting lineup is what matters. But there are plenty. There's games each night where a bench player stepped up and made a huge difference. And if they weren't the main reason their team won the game, was a key contributing factor. So the bench is important.
So speaking of Eastern Conference, you have a team that you worried about. Feel like they got a little life to them, and I think there's a team that we talked about last on the Western Conference I want to cover, but the Eastern Conference, who's your team that you really like for those fans out there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like saying anything that's too surprising to basketball fans, but I think that the Pistons are a really interesting team right now. They did lose last night, but they've beat some really good teams. They've played some good games. Cade Cunningham is the real deal. He's a bigger ball handler. And I just love their team because they have a lot of good young pieces, but they also have some good vets who have been around and who are not necessarily superstars, but are serviceable. Tobias Harris, he caught a lot of flack at the end of his Sixers career. Bet you the Sixers wouldn't mind having Tobias Harris back. But I digress.
Another team for that.
He can score and he's a big body. He can play, and Tim Hardaway can get hot and shoot well. The Pistons are a team that's going to be a tough out in the playoffs. They're going to give you a lot. They could. I'm thinking about the Knicks, man. The Knicks end up playing the Pistons in round 1. They could beat them. They could beat them in a 7-game series.
Do you feel like because of the Detroit's toughness, that's why the Knicks could really get beat up, and that's why they would have the chances? They would just basically just pound them, if you will, just really be more physical?
Yeah, there's some of what the Knicks had last year, I think, in them. I think Cade Cunningham is really coming into his own. He's a genuine superstar in the league. But you got a guy like Isaiah Stewart, who is tough, coming off the bench. Thompson, who's not quite the scorer, I don't think, that his brother is in Houston. But he's still, he gives you a lot of energy. And they seem to have gotten a lot of good, young, hungry guys. That's not always the case. A lot of times you get rookies that are kind of like deer in the headlights kind of players. And they had a key player go down too. I mean, Jaden Ivey, he was a good player for them, and he's out for the year. But they're going to surprise a lot of people, and they're a team to watch going forward because they're going to have money to spend, and they're going to be an attractive team. They got a good legacy. The Pistons do, a good basketball legacy. They'll attract some players.
I feel like, again, in the NBA, the stars get the calls. The Knicks have the stars. They should beat the Detroit team. But I feel like there's some scrappy teams in the Western Conference that remind me of Detroit, but they're simmering. So if you look at the Western Conference, the teams that I feel are putting a key in the ignition, Golden State with that trade have figured it out. If you look at the standings today, Golden State is currently sitting at 6. The other team that I felt is figuring it out is Minnesota. I feel like they're figuring out the bench, the aggressiveness. I feel like Ant's kind of figuring out the two teams ahead of those two teams in the 4 and 5 position are Memphis and Houston, who were sitting at 2 and 3 for the longest time, but they're coming back down to earth.
They're coming back down to earth.
So Memphis, when I look at this,
I hate to say it, but they're a pretender.
And when I look at this, I see Golden State and Minnesota replacing those two teams. If you have Golden State, Minnesota in the first round, thank you,
that's
NBA.
A rough
that
matchup.
Is a fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah, you don't want to see those teams.
But then again, the one OKC gets the winner. So the Western Conference is tough. That is 4-5 is tough because Golden State. I mean, Butler and Steph are showing that they got some goods. A little older, hard to beat up Steph because he doesn't go in the lane a lot.
Yeah.
But Minnesota's that team that's lengthy. I do love Ant so much. And then the winner would play OKC, which is obviously above everybody else. That would be a heck of a series, Minnesota OKC.
Yeah. Oh, that would be fun.
So again, you get this luxury as an NBA fan. This is why, again, I go back to like the Lakers in Denver 2-3. Is that the other matchup?
Matchups are so key.
That gets interesting because Denver, I feel, fits in the right lane. But those are the teams.
Who's stopping Jokic on the Lakers?
I think he stops himself.
You think so, huh?
Because I think the biggest problem that he has is he doesn't protect the rim. So if you let Luka or James get by you, that's been his biggest problem. But
I was talking about offensively, but you're right.
There's no one he's gonna get his 40 and 10.
Yeah.
Like you let him get 40. You stop the other guys.
Yeah.
That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
Because let him have layups all day long. You figure you're just gonna tire him out by making him score so much. Let him average 50.
There is, I don't know if it's just his demeanor, but there is a side of me, and how could I say this because he did win a championship, but like there is a part of me that thinks like does Jokic even care that much?
Nonchalant.
Do you remember when they won the championship?
He's like, I want to go home.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
They're like, oh, you got the parade in 2 days. He's like, he was genuinely like, I just want to go home.
Yeah, I think he.
I don't want to be in this country anymore.
I think it'll be interesting. I think he has that drive. His teammates have the drive. He's really incredible. I don't know. I just think when I look at the Western Eastern Conference playoffs, I think the Eastern Conference still doesn't have the amount of talent that the Western Conference does.
No.
Doesn't have the star-studded talent that the Western Conference does. I know the NBA is very happy that Golden State and Minnesota are moving their way up. Very happy with those trades. One of the trades in the Western Conference that didn't happen, that was talked about a lot as a Suns fan, was KD going to Golden State. He said no to that trade. He's still on the Suns. The Suns are currently outside looking in, even on a playoff. Everyone's written about how the team is a dumpster fire. It's over. I think there's one player on the team that just shouldn't play. They just should pay him to go away. That's Beal. Every time he plays, it just doesn't help. And again, he gets injured, and then they win and come back against the Clippers, which was a much-needed win. Is
he still coming off the bench?
He's injured again, so he's gone. He's starting, and now he's gone. But they brought in this point guard from Villanova who actually dribbles around and passes, which is what they needed.
Yeah.
But they still don't have an inside presence. They have a bunch of jump shooters. You think the market, and everyone does think this. It's not just you, but everyone thinks KD is going to get traded this offseason. And you think that the Suns need to rebuild anyways. They're not going to win a championship. They're on the outside looking in. Even if Dallas falls below them, you're the 10th seed. Congratulations. You got to play in game, and you have to win 2 to get in, which is hard enough for the Suns to win 2 in a row, let alone 1.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at the trade market for KD in the offseason, which everyone thinks is going to happen, by the way, we are not breaking any news by no means.
It's a very unkept secret.
Who are you? I'm looking at this selfishly from a Suns fan's perspective. I don't know what they can get for this, but anything is better than what we have.
I think multiple teams will pony up for the idea of Kevin Durant. We both know that he hasn't exactly been, what all those teams hoped for that have gotten him recently, have acquired him recently. But I think, he's got that name value, and he certainly can still shoot the ball. I think
here I want to give you something crazy about the Suns. I believe they started 8-1. And he was fantastic as closing out. And if you also go back in his career with Brooklyn, when they had the trifecta there, he had a 3-pointer to win the game, and his foot was on the line. They went to overtime and lost.
That's right.
But he hit that shot over like 2 guys that was like money.
Yeah.
And you're not blocking his shot. And he still was money at the beginning of the year, at the fourth quarter, and I think he saw the writing on the wall and was like, this is not happening. Whatever it may be. So to your point about him being an addition, a missing piece, if you will.
Yeah.
Who's going to pony up that money?
So
$50
here's the
million.
thing. I think the team that, from a basketball standpoint alone, makes the most sense for Kevin is OKC. It's his former team. There's a great story there with him coming back and potentially finally winning a championship with the team that he left and bailed on.
You're right, because he was with he drafted by Seattle. Seattle turned into OKC.
Yep. He would have no. I mean, and he got him to the finals against the Heat, and then of course we remember they lost to the Warriors, and Kevin said, "If you can't beat him, join him," and the rest is history. But there's a great story to be told there from his point of view. For his story, he really would not need. He would have very little pressure on him. He would not. He would come in and he wouldn't be expected to even be the second best player on the team, because you have Gilgeous-Alexander, you have Williams, and Kevin could just spot up and shoot threes, and dig in on defense every once in a while, and be long and rangy. And man, I think he would be a great addition.
So what happens in that scenario is OKC has to lose and not go to the finals. If they go to the finals and lose, they're going to be like, we're right there.
Because my second point was that I don't think OKC would feel that they need to get him, unless they get bumped by the Lakers in the Western Conference.
Even put that out there.
I'm just saying it's always a possibility. I wouldn't bet on it, but I also wouldn't be flabbergasted if they did. Or if they got to the finals and got embarrassed by the Celtics.
Boston?
Yeah, they might feel like, all right, let's give KD a shot, and they really would not have to lose much to get him. From their point of view, they have so many assets. They've played a lot of this year without Chet Holmgren. They could lose him. There's your new center for the Suns. They can give up a player like Lou Dort, who would be a great starter on most teams and a great rotation player on most teams. Brings a lot of intangibles.
So if you're the Suns making this trade, you're getting picks, obviously, and you're getting a couple players. Then you're going to Booker, because Beal has a no trade clause. Then you have Booker, who's like, great, you got picks for the future. I'm literally like, does that set off a domino of then trading Booker and you end up with Beal and a bunch of stuff?
Well, that's another issue, because my hope in making that deal would be, yes, you're getting picks, but you're getting young players, but they're young players who have been to the playoffs for a couple of years. They're not slouches. They could theoretically work well with Booker. You're not like trading for somebody in his position or anything like that. I think there's a world you'd have to do some other roster maneuvering. Maybe if you get somebody to take Beal off your hands or convince Beal to go away, but
I think that's hard to get him to go away. I think Booker probably demands a trade. If I'm Booker, I would want to go to the Eastern Conference.
Oh, 100%.
I would want 100%. Out of the Western Conference personally.
Maybe into Detroit. And have
so in your scenario, as a Suns fan, let me think about this for a second. Booker's in Detroit, KD's on OKC. We have young players and picks now. That's what we have as a Sun, and we have Beal, who will just show up and do whatever. We don't care the next 2 years.
Yeah.
So then, fast forward 2 years. Wemby's 2 years older. Luka's more solidified.
The Lakers have poached another superstar.
I just don't see the Suns competing for a championship for 5 to 10 years right now. That's my problem. If they lose
Booker, probably not.
Even with Booker, probably not. Booker's not like the man in this Western Conference. He's not going to give you a championship.
No. He's probably... Booker and Durant probably would have worked out if Durant was 5 or 6 years younger when they acquired him.
It didn't help that when they got him, he got hurt.
Yeah, that's true too.
And again, that's timing. So
and honestly, has he ever been at that top-notch level that he was before that injury with the Warriors?
You talking about Kevin Durant?
Yeah.
Kevin Durant's a hard read because he really doesn't. This is the other thing about the stars of the game. If he had that Isaiah Thomas smile and was angry at the reporters, do you know how much they'd love him?
Yeah.
Like Isaiah Thomas has gotten so far with that smile.
Yeah.
And he just would smile. Kevin Durant's like he's getting into that angry old man phase for an NBA player because he's snippy in Arizona. He's upset. He's frustrated. He wants to get there. He wants to be with all of these guys. These are all the guys that are elite, and he's out of the playoffs.
But, I mean, his old teammate, Kendrick Perkins, recently came out and said he doesn't think he really cares about winning championships. I could be... I'm paraphrasing. I don't know what his exact words were, but...
Well, when he didn't go to Golden State, a lot of people judged him on that. Although I will tell you that if I was Golden State, Butler, I think, is a better get than KD. But problem that Golden State now has is you have two age. You have to go this year.
It has to be this year.
Because you have, I mean, there are three guys who are all old.
There's a lot of people who are saying Jimmy Butler was cooked earlier this year. So
you're not wrong, but he certainly looks a lot better with a lot more space. Curry opens some things up for you.
But I think I'm no lover of Kevin Durant, but I will give him the benefit of the doubt. I think that denying the trade to Golden State was more about he did not like the flack that he took for going to Golden State in the first place. And
I like your idea of going to OKC to kind of like, to full circle.
The other team with assets that might be a little more desperate than OKC, and certainly at this point an argument would be made need him more to succeed and to be a contender is Houston.
How I could see that. Yeah, Houston and also Memphis as well. They have the two teams are
true.
They're in the playoffs, but they're not. Everybody sees what they are.
Although nobody seems to want to go to Memphis. Jimmy Butler apparently had every opportunity to go to Memphis, and he would have been a really good fit with them, with Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr., and he said, that's the only team I won't go to. I mean, he changed his strategy in getting the trade that he wanted multiple times, but at one point, the narrative was, I don't want to go. I'll go to anybody but Memphis. So.
Do you feel as a Knicks fan you're more negative about the Knicks in the future? Because even now you're like, oh, we could lose in the first round. And me as a Suns fan, I'm like, it's over. We're not even going to be a playoff championship for like 10 years. I always look at things and I'm always glass half empty all the time with my teams because it's like, you've been let down. I've been let down. We've thought we had it and it just doesn't happen. And you're just like, I had so much hope when I was younger and now I'm just a realist.
No,
you're gonna kick me.
I'm actually with the Knicks. As much as I come off as a pessimist a lot of times, I don't think they're doomed. I think I'm deflated because last year, coming off a second round exit, 2 years in a row, it's like, all right, I'm expecting this next year. This is the year they get to the conference finals at least, and I don't feel strongly that that's going to happen this year, but. They've got a bunch of guys in their prime. They have a window. There's a precedence in the league right now that like teams are formed and it takes them a year to 2 to even 3 years to gel. Sometimes it's a new coach that's needed, but like the Cavs are essentially the same team that they were 2 years ago with some good depth that's been added. But the main key players are there. They just needed to grow together. And, so I think there's a scenario where the Knicks are, next year a lot better because they've played a full year together and had a full training camp and all that. So I'm not that down on it. It's just deflating because coming off of the buzz from last year, it feels like they should be better than they are.
And as a Suns fan, like the thing that's probably... I think the hardest part of seeing everything in the Western Conference is that you're on the bottom, you're older. There's not really like a nucleus. It just feels like it's out. It just feels like it's not. There's nothing really they're trying to get to. And I do feel like the Eastern Conference has more opportunity. It just feels that way. Even though like it's going to be interesting because the one team we haven't discussed and we should in the next episode is Milwaukee. That's another team that we should discuss. But you're right, Houston, Memphis, OKC. If they get KD, I mean you're looking at the number 1 seed and just adding KD. It would be really, really a great story. But I will say this: what the Suns didn't do in the trade and getting all the focus on them, they really have not buried Philly enough for what they did this year. Like this, everyone's talking about how the Suns are a disaster and their payroll and their problems. The Suns are look so much nicer than Philadelphia.
Definitely.
And nobody's talking about that because all I think about is like you had 3 guys and they haven't even they have not even come together at all. And then now you're shutting your one of your guys down, and we both think he looks really bad. And I think Paul George is well beyond his prime, and he's lived it. He's done it. He's happy. I just think there's nothing there. I think the Suns, there's not much there. But, my God, if the Suns were an 8 seed, for instance, or a 7 seed, all they would be talking about is how much of a disaster the Philly is.
Yeah.
I think they covered it early because they started so slow, so they beat them so much. But now that they shut down Embiid, it's like, well, this is what they are.
And Philly got praised for their offseason. I mean,
again, look at the offseason, folks, as we wrap up the show. They hated all the moves the Lakers made, and they love the moves the Philadelphia made. And Philadelphia is 20 wins, and the Lakers are a 2 seed.
Yeah.
So you're our NBA insider at Batter Sports, and I can say as our resident expert, you're a hell of a lot better at predicting some of this stuff than the guys that spend their whole career knowing the game and being on the inside and hanging out with the players. Clearly that didn't help with the story writing.
Right.
They couldn't see that this player in the Olympics wasn't going to be the player he was supposed to be in the season, which is, that to me is wild. How do you hang out with all these players and nobody goes, hey, he doesn't look right?
Yeah.
And we knew he didn't look right in the playoffs last year.
No, he was not. He was not the same Embiid.
So, but you got Big Cat plays. He doesn't, which is nice.
Yeah.
So, any final thoughts here for the NBA fan dreaming about the future? The playoffs are forthcoming. We get a couple months of playoffs here.
The fun thing is that there's still over a month away to the playoffs, and a lot can change in that time, and probably will. So we'll have lots of interesting things to discuss right here on Batter Sports.
Tonight we buried with Philly. We buried Dallas, right?
Oh yeah.
It's been a year.
It's been a year.
We feel the worst for the season ticket holders.
They're right now. Those are the leading our leading stories for the off season of curiosity.
I would love to see the response emails when they get, "Hey, are you ready to re-up for the Mavs season tickets?"
Oh my gosh,
those emails would be fantastic.
No,
just fantastic.
They're gonna have to lower those season ticket prices for next year.
It's like, no, we didn't mean to raise them. We got to bring it down. What a bad.
It's a clerical error.
So there you go, Dallas. Enjoy the offseason. It's been real. AD goes from the Lakers to not even in the playoffs.
Poor slob.
Just like that. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like us. As always, that is our expert, Nolan, and we will be bringing you our NBA insights as we go through the rest of the season here, the fun part of the season, and the playoffs.
More hot takes to come.
Thanks, everybody. You guys have a good one.